Who was Marsha P Johnson? You will have heard the name Marsha P Johnson, especially since the beginning of the Black Lives Matter protest this year, and also a lot during Pride Month. You may not have realised that it was trans people and drag queens like Marsha who were the first to start off the Pride movement and call for gay power across America and eventually the world. In our last video, we covered the origins of Pride, but today we want to acknowledge Marsha P Johnson and what she did for the LGBTQ+ community. As the term transgender was not often used during her lifetime, in this video we'll be referring to Marsha as she described herself, as a queen or gay, or under her chosen female pronouns. For those who don't know much about her, she moved to Greenwich Village in 1988 from New Jersey, and she arrived in New York with just $15. Marsha lived mostly homeless, having very little to her name, but she spent her life as an activist, a drag performer, and a sex worker, and even modelled for Andy Warhol. As an activist, she was known and praised for her calls for social justice and advocated on behalf of AIDS patients. She used to take on sex work on behalf of homeless youths who had been abandoned by their families for being gay or identifying as non-conforming gender, and sheltered them through the street transvestite action revolutionaries, feeding and clothing these oppressed people. And for these actions, many consider her a saint. In a New York Times article, Susan Stryker, a professor at the University of Arizona, says, quote, Marsha could be perceived as the most marginalised of people, being black, queer and poor, and you might expect a person in such a position to be fragile and beaten down, but instead Marsha has a capacity to find joy in the world of suffering, and she channeled it into political action with a kind of fierceness, grace and whimsy. End quote. Bearing in mind that during Marsha's time in New York City, gay people and criminalisation of their activities was common, such as same-sex dancing and being served alcohol, and it was seen as a sexual deviancy to cross-dress. During one particular night, a police raid on the Stonewall Inn in New York City turned into a protest, and the patrons of the bar fought back through chants, dance, throwing coins and objects, and resisting arrest. Marsha P Johnson was 23 at the time and is noted for being a part of the group who resisted the police on that night. She is an iconic queen who suffered with mental health and spent a lot of her later years before her death in grief due to the AIDS pandemic, eventually becoming HIV positive herself. Marsha P Johnson's name has come up a lot during the year to push awareness for black trans people and the extreme oppression that they face even today. You are likely to carry on seeing protests and conversation around Black Lives Matter, and especially around Trans Lives Matter, but it's important to carry on these conversations to educate those who may not be able to access resources like this, and to know about great people like Marsha and the work that they have done for oppressed groups. As Marsha herself once said, quote, as long as gay people don't have their rights all across America, there is no reason for celebration. End quote. Thank you for watching our video today. You can find more content like this over on our Instagram by searching @GYBHull, or you can find us over on Facebook by searching Got Your Back Hull. If you're a service or a professional, you can keep up to date with our activities on our bespoke feed on Twitter by searching @GYBHull.